thoughts. I always use the example, try to think, I like water, I don't like water in the same moment. We're not able. What happens is if we have a certain type of thought of any type, to eliminate that thought, we need to generate its direct opposite. I can think, I don't like the taste of water, but I like the temperature. I can think of these two things because they're not directly opposite, but I'm not able to think I like and I don't like at the same time. When we have certain inner states of being and we recognize the importance of eliminating them, changing them, it becomes essential to generate the opposing force, the direct opposite. That's one point. The second point, as Geshe Chikawa said, the 12th century master, he said the mind is full of defects, but it has one great quality. What you teach it, it will follow. And Geshe Chikawa, in another text called 7-Point Mind Training, which we'll look at during the mind training Lojong teachings of the end of the year, end of December, beginning of January. He says, eliminate the guilty one and familiarize yourself with the kindness of every being. Eliminate the one guilty of everything. Every time there's a problem, every time there's conflict, every time there's suffering, who's to blame? Other than the other, of course. That's what we say, but actually the real to blame is selfishness, which is neither the other or me. But the one to blame for everything is this obsession with self-gratification. Even if we think about the strong problems in our society today that are clearly manifested, like environmental problems, climatic problems. Today, do we have these problems because of lack of resources, lack of knowledge? Social problems, wars, conflicts, do they exist because there aren't the resources, because of external reasons, or because of the selfishness of everyone involved? At the end of the day, it's everyone who looks at himself and is not able to see the others. How can I use less? No. It's my right. I can use as even more. And then, and if together we create some kind of damage, it doesn't matter. What's important is that I'm satisfied, which I remember my parents had a house at the seaside, and they used to go every once in a while, and the neighbor had a house nearby, and he would take the garbage and throw it over the wall. It's like saying, so I've thrown the garbage off of my property. But just on the other side of the wall, it was stinky. It brought some kind of sickness. I mean, this comes from the obsession with our self-gratification, our inability to see anything beyond the eye and the mind. If we go to see, all the wars come from this, all conflicts come from that, our environmental problems come from this too. It's normal that certain choices are made and one doesn't know what the consequences are. But once you can see them, if if the common good really were really a priority, then we wouldn't even need to talk about certain things. Because when we have these enormous meetings about to decide how to do things, it's like trying to maintain the balance among the ego of everyone. But when Geshe Chikawa talks about the one to blame for everyone, it's our own selfishness. How can I eliminate selfishness? Because let's start from a preliminary question. Are we selfish or not? When we need to judge something, what's our reference? The I and the my, or the common good? When we make a choice, what's our reference? The needs and the benefits of the I and the my, or the common good on a larger scale? Very often, most often, it's about the I and the my. So we're selfish. I mean, we don't need to look at it from too many sides. But here's a very important problem. How can I eliminate selfishness and develop altruism, which is the opposite of selfishness, being selfish? Because if I'm selfish, I already give the priority to the I and the my. How can I get out of that? And he in the book by Losang Chogyal Gyaltsen, this book of the debate between selfishness and wisdom, the Dagsen Shagdep, the wisdom represents also altruism. So wisdom says, "Get out of here. You're detrimental to all beings." And ignorance says, "What are you talking about? If it weren't for me, this person wouldn't even gotten close to the Dharma. You see this person here practicing, studying philosophy, meditating, etc., etc. It's thanks to me, first of all." It's true or not? Or do we get close to Buddhism for altruistic reasons right from the beginning? No, we start with, I want to be well, and I think that that's going to help me. That's our starting point. So this brings us to something, depending on how we see it, it can seem like, how can I say? It can seem like a kind of trap. This saying, how can I eliminate selfishness being selfish? The key is found in the fact that it's possible, and there are two aspects. First of all, it's important to understand that selfishly speaking, it's better to be altruistic. Even thinking about my own well-being, I'm better off when I include others compared to excluding them. Even if I'm thinking about my own well-being, the more obsessed I am with the I and the my, the worse off I am. It seems like a play on words, but it isn't. Selfishly speaking, it's better to be altruistic. And we need to go through a whole process to get there. And the second thing is this understanding that altruism doesn't exist in opposition to selfishness. Instead, altruism is an evolution of selfishness. This is my own understanding. Maybe it's wrong, but let me explain a little bit better. What is selfishness, first of all? It's made up of this enormous attraction for happiness and aversion to suffering directed towards ourselves, the I and the my. So selfishness clearly manifests in I don't want to suffer and I want to be happy. And I'm ready to do anything necessary so that I am happy and I don't suffer. And we include the my too. If I don't want, so if you are included in the my, then I don't want you to suffer either. Because if you suffer, then I suffer. But if I don't see you as being part of the my, then I don't care. So this is called also craving, this craving for happiness, wanting to be happy at all costs, being ready to do anything to be well, and this desire to want to avoid suffering. So our absolute priority is being well and avoiding suffering. Do we all agree? Altruism is the same identical force, attraction towards happiness, aversion for suffering, that doesn't exclude ourselves but includes others. Let's imagine this attraction to happiness and aversion to suffering. So in addition to me not wanting to suffer, I include the suffering of others as being as important as my own. So the strength is exactly the same, the force is the same. The difference is selfishness is direct also oneself. It includes others. So it's not just not exclusively towards the inside, but it includes ourselves and others. Because one mistake that we make is thinking that selfishness is thinking of ourselves and altruism is thinking of others. So normally what happens is when we think of others, it's a sacrifice, and when we think of ourselves, we feel guilty. Because if they're two opposing things, I'm thinking of myself and I'm excluding others. I'm thinking of others, I'm excluding myself. And it's not like this. This is an error that comes from our dualistic way of seeing things. Instead, we need to go beyond this dualistic view, where we talk about equalizing ourselves with others. But what we exchange is not that I put myself in someone else's place. It's the attitude that I have for myself. I turn it also towards others. I include others. Can we see how altruism is an evolution of selfishness? When we understand this, it's beautiful, because I ask you, can you access this great strength that you have, this force for your attraction to happiness and aversion for suffering? I mean, how strong is that within you? Very strong. It's one of the strengths, one of the greatest strengths that exists. It moves mountains, it moves everything. So that same force is wonderful. If we try to block it, then it just overwhelms us. We'll never be able. Instead, if we're able to recognize that strength within, and we don't try to block it, but we try to redirect it, where I want my own happiness, yes, but that's the starting point for altruism too. Just as I want to be well, I want you to be well too. Just in the same way, I don't want to suffer. I don't want you to suffer either. And in this way, we expand this. What's interesting is the fact of wanting others to be happy doesn't exclude us wanting our own happiness. wanting someone else to be happy doesn't mean that we're excluding wanting the happiness of another. It's not like we have a quota, and after we can only love three, and and we can't love four people. It doesn't work like that. The more I use love, the more it grows. Our inner qualities have these characteristics. The more we work on them, the more we develop them, the more we use these characteristics, the greater they become. Actually, even the negative ones, the negative ones too, it's one of the characteristics of our brain. Our brain, it's a physical characteristic. The more we use one part of our brain, the stronger it becomes, like memory, intuition, creativity, critical mind, logical aspects, whatever it is, memory. The more we use that quality, the more it develops. It's not like the more I use it, the more I use it up. No. With the feeling of love, this desire for happiness, and compassion, which is aversion for suffering, there are these two feelings that we talked about before that we have within. This attraction to happiness, that's a love, and aversion to suffering, that's compassion. So what happens is I love myself when I want my own happiness. I have compassion for myself when I don't want to suffer. Those same feelings directed towards others, they become love for others and compassion for others. So to actually overcome my own selfishness, which is one of the principal causes of my own suffering, I need to develop a feeling of love towards others. And this is the second of the three principal aspects of the path. So now let's go back to the text of Lama Tsongkhapa. I just want to look for something quickly here. Nejun Deyang Namdam Semkieki Simpa na Lame Chanchuki Punsuk Dewa Gyurumi Gyurwe Loden Namki Chanchu Semcho Kie Shudra Chuo Shigi Gungi Kerdo Ka Leki Chingwanda Podam Daksen Chegi Jua Busutsu Marik Mupa Makchenku Ne Tib. And he goes on with Mume. Even if renunciation has been developed, if one hasn't generated pure bodhicitta, it will not become the cause of the perfect joy of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise should generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma, so difficult to undo, trapped in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such conditions, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So we're in verse number 6. Nejung Deyan Namdam Semkye Ki Simparanel Lame Chanchu Ki Punsuntewe Gyuru Mi Gyurwe Luden Namki Chanchu Semchokye. Even if this renunciation, this certainty to emerge, definite emergence, has not been developed. It won't, if even if the renunciation has been developed, if one hasn't generated the pure bodhicitta, it will not become the cause of the perfect joy of surpassing enlightenment. What does he mean? First of all, okay, if this state of wanting to get out of samsara, as we talked about before, if it's not united with the desire of wanting to go beyond samsara, because there are two states. One is when we eliminate ignorance, and there is no longer this grasping at it is inherent world, and there no longer the solid basis for ignorance and all the mental defilements. He who reaches this state is no longer in a state of samsaric suffering. He's free from this suffering, but doesn't have his qualities developed to the maximum level. Reality still appears in inconsistent way. Karma still exists. I mean, it's wonderful. There is, but one can choose also the one's rebirth, which is marvelous. But one's qualities are not fully developed. Chanchup, or Buddha, or enlightenment, they all have the same meaning, more or less. Buddha is Sangye in Tibetan. So reaching Buddhahood, the problem in our translation, Buddha is Buddha. We don't have a translation for it. And when we say reach Buddhahood, it gives us the idea of reaching a divine state of someone, or does it give us this idea of reaching an inner state? I say that it gives us an idea of reaching a divine state. So Buddha Shakyamuni reach Buddhahood, then we reach the state that Buddha Shakyamuni reached. On one side is true, Buddha Shakyamuni reached Buddhahood, this state. But the state of Buddha, when translated in Tibetan, Buddhahood, the Tibetans were able to create new words. When they made the translation of Dharma from Sanskrit to Tibetan, they created. It took years and years, and they brought together the wisest men and scholars to create new words. Tibetan is a composed language, so it helps here. So sang in this case means to eliminate, to clarify, to eliminate, and gye means to develop. So if we were to say Buddha Shakyamuni, this translation would be so to eliminate and develop Shakyamuni. That doesn't sound right, but we actually should create a new word, because we don't have the concept for it. The concept is this state where all mental defilements, ignorance and its imprints are completely eliminated, and all the qualities like wisdom and compassion and love, awareness, etc., are developed to the maximum potential. And that's why we have eliminate and develop. Every negativity, together with its imprints, are completely eliminated, and every quality is developed to its maximum capacity. Sangye literally means eliminate, develop. when we do the prayer of the taking of refuge, you know, Sangye Chedan Suki Chanam Lat Sangye. Take refuge in Buddha. It's a state, it's not a person. And then it's given this name also to those who've reached this state. So, eliminate every negativity and develop every quality. Chanchup makes reference to this state of Buddhahood, means the same thing. Chang, chup, differently, means to eliminate completely every negativity and develop the qualities to their maximum potential. So here it's translated as enlightenment, but sometimes the word awakening is used. It comes from a metaphor. We're taken by ignorance as if we are dreaming and we're not aware that we're sleeping, that we're dreaming. When you get out of samsara, is by eliminating ignorance. It's like we're in a dream and we're aware of a dream. And when you eliminate the imprints of that dream, you don't even have the appearance of that dream and you are awake. One is awakened. So here, when we use the term enlightenment, it's not the best of words, of translations, in my point of view, because Chanchup from Tibetan clearly gives the idea that we need to generate and develop our qualities and eliminate our negativities. Every time we hear a word, Buddhahood, enlightenment, it means to eliminate completely every negativity and its imprint and develop to maximum potential all of our qualities. So even if renunciation has been developed, if one hasn't generated pure bodhicitta, it will not become the cause of the perfect joy of unsurpassed enlightenment. So this is the difference between liberation and so-called enlightenment. Liberation is when we get out of the cycle of samsara, but we still have the imprints of ignorance. And so there's still a lot to do. And one might ask, oh, just a minute, once I get out of samsara, why do I need to work any harder? And it's a valid question, because if I think about myself, once I'm no longer suffering, what else do I need? Nothing. What's the problem? When I want to help others, how difficult is it to help others? What's the first condition that one needs really to help others? One needs to know the others, know others. If I want to help you, I need to be able to interact with you through your own reality, with your own language. And if I don't speak your language, if I don't understand your reality, if I'm not able to see the world through your eyes and adapt, then I won't be able to help. Sometimes we hear, oh, that person doesn't want to be helped. I try so hard, no matter how much I try, he doesn't want to be helped. It's not all really like that. If we want to be precise, it's I'm not able to find the tools, the right key to enter and to help that person, because it's the one who helps that needs to adapt to the one who needs the help. Generally speaking, the one who helps should adapt to the one who needs the help. So if I want to help you get out of your cycle of suffering, eliminate your suffering, change your worldview, develop love instead of selfishness. I need to be able to get into your mind. I need to show you my reality through your eyes. And it's very, very difficult. And one quality that only a Buddha has, because he's completely eliminated also the imprints to ignorance, is this ability to see every being, to see reality the way every being sees it. And so he's able to adapt to each person. Because if I want to help all beings, I have no other choice but to learn their way of seeing things. I can help some, but not all. But if I think of myself, I mean, getting out of samsara, that's more than enough. But if I want to help others, really, in an equal way, I have no other choice but to develop my own qualities to their maximum potential and become a Buddha. And it's interesting that the only real reason to become a Buddha is to be of benefit to others. So here it says, if I don't have a total aspiration to become a Buddha myself, it won't be the cause of the perfect joy of unsurpassed enlightenment, this Buddhahood, this state of enlightenment. So on the other side, it's true that that the state free of samsara is beautiful, but Buddhahood is, free of illusory appearance, but is free of suffering, but also reaches levels of bliss and joy that are incomparable. So this, so a state of balance and a state of balance and stability linked, compared also to a state of joy is incomparable. So the wise one says, okay, good to get out of samsara, but that's not enough. And it's not easy. The only thing that will give me the strength to do what's necessary to get out of samsara and become a Buddha is love. Love is the only strength that can do this. Nagarjuna, and then his another life, in another Chandrakirti, who comments on Nagarjuna, he praises love. He says love is like water. Love and compassion are like two sides of the same coin. Love and compassion are like water that are important at the beginning, during, and at the end. Let's take a tree, for example. When there's a seed, it's thanks to water that it can sprout. And it's thanks to water that sprout can grow. And it's thanks to water that a tree can actually give fruit. If there's no water, there's no sprout, there's no tree, there's no fruit. And in the same way, it's love that allows the practitioner to enter the path and to sprout the seed. When this passion to get out of samsara sprouts, this love for oneself, this definite emergence, this is what lets this seed of enlightenment sprout, this love for oneself. And the whole path, practicing the perfections, generosity, morality, enthusiastic effort, etc., the strength that allows us to to walk along the path is love for ourselves. That's what allows for that gives us strength along the path. The main force to moves this energy towards Buddhahood is the sincere love and compassion towards others. And once we're a Buddha, it's still love and compassion that push the Buddhas to help others. So it's love and compassion that help sprout the that seed of love for ourselves is nourished by love, and then it's love for others that nourishes the seed for enlightenment. So the wise one doesn't stay trapped in oneself. He recognizes that the cause of every suffering is selfishness, and one needs to go beyond, even to reach this final state of bliss. So it says that bodhicitta, which literally means mind of enlightenment, bodhi means the state of enlightenment, this state of having eliminated every mental defilement and having developed one's own quality to their maximum potential, is called bodhi. Citta means mind in Sanskrit. So bodhicitta is the mind of enlightenment. Bodhicitta is the mind that aspires, that desires strongly to reach a state of Buddhahood for the benefit of others. And that's the only reason to do it, because if one thinks only of himself, one says, why should I put in the effort? As I said yesterday, getting out of samsara and reaching enlightenment, there's 1/3 is getting out of samsara, and then another 2/3 for enlightenment. So if we were to mark the milestones along the path, we have, up to the path of seeing, where there's a non-conceptual understanding of emptiness, and then getting out of samsara was like 1/3 of the path. And then the path of meditation or familiarization is made up of what's called the 10 bhumis, until we get to Buddhahood, and that's 2/3 of the path. So 2 times what's necessary to get out of samsara. And the good news, as I said yesterday, that in that last part, the 2/3, there's not the suffering of samsara. But what pushes us to become a Buddha is love towards others, love and compassion towards others. But on the other hand, without the development of love and compassion, it's difficult to eliminate our own selfishness. So egotistically speaking, it's better to be altruistic. So when one takes the responsibility to do something to help others, where one recognizes the only real thing that one can do to help others is to develop oneself. How can I help you have wisdom when I'm ignorant myself? It's said that a blind person can't guide another blind person along the path. You need to be able to see, and it's not a great metaphor, because there are blind people who can do marvelous things. But the idea is, as a blind person, I can't show you something that I can't see myself. So first, I need to reach a state to help others do the same. And the process for this is the process of compassion, because we need to get close to the beings to be able to feel compassion and love for them. And we could spend hours and hours, days, talking about the various pastises there are. Now, instead, we'll be a little superficial in the explanation, and it will stay linked to the text. The next verse and a half makes reference to the process of love and compassion. It says, Shutrachubu Shi Gungiker, this is verse 7. Dokaleki Chingwandamputam Saxen Chagidrawe Buksutsu Marek Mupe Machen Kuneti Mumesipar Keshin Kiwaru Dunasumge Guncheme Paranaranev Ditar Gyurpa Manam Ki Nang Su Samne Semchu Ke Parutsu. So, forgive me, I'm looking for something in the Tibetan.
No, è che la parola samsarici non c'è nel tibetano, quello che stavo cercando, no? Perciò è un, diciamo, è una, come si dice, un diritto poetico del traduttore, una licenza poetica del traduttore che ha aggiunto samsarici. Però si dice
Verse 7. Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bond of karma, so difficult to undo, trapped in the iron net of self-grasping. It's attachment to oneself. Completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. Endlessly reborn in cyclic existence. Ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings. Thinking that all mothers are in such conditions, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Thinking in that way, generate the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. So, the samsaric beings here, those who are swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. Let's try to imagine this metaphor. Beings who are swept away by these four currents, the very strong, powerful rivers. And as they're swept away, they're tied by chains. They've got their hands and their legs chained. And at the same time, they're trapped inside an iron net. And if that weren't enough, they're in total darkness. They can't even see what's happening. And they're in this state from a beginningless time and without any prospect of getting out. And as they're in this state, they're constantly tortured by the three types of three sufferings and aquatic animals. And they're in this state from a beginningless time, and they're not able to see a way out. Let's look at the meaning. Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. The four powerful rivers can be seen in two different ways. They can be the rivers of the cause or of the result. the four powerful currents that sweep away the beings. We're swept away in our actions by desire, by our wrong views, our view of the world, our karma, and our own ignorance. Karma in the sense of our past actions. So when we see someone act in whatever way, this person, this being, is he free from desire? Is he free from his worldview, his paradigm? Is he free from the force of his past actions that ripen in the present? Is he free from his ignorance? No. So this shows you that our free will is very small because we're conditioned by our past. So we're like as if we're swept by this the powerful river of the past that pushes us in our present, our desire, our paradigm, our worldview, the actions that we've done in the past that ripen in the present, our actions of the past that ripen in the present, and our ignorance. And then there are also four currents of the result, which is of birth, aging, sickness, and death. And no one can stop that. We're constantly swept away by this process of birth and aging, sickness, and death, on and on and on. The first four were the causal rivers or currents, and these are the resultant rivers. So these are the four powerful rivers. And when we see the first four, just imagine a person who acts in a way that you think is wrong. Think of anyone. Today, with all the news and the wars, we see things, each one has his way of seeing things, but it's difficult looking at the news that one wouldn't say, no, this shouldn't be like this. But when you think about those who act violently, is he swept away by his own desires, almost involuntary, by his own worldview? Or is he just free from his own paradigm? He's swept away by karmic force, by his own experiences and actions done in the past that are ripening in this present moment. And he's swept away by his own ignorance. Right? And in the middle of all of this, he's totally linked, trapped by the tight chains of karma, which means that when we do things, that cycle starts, and until that the results need to ripen. It's like I drop a vase from the 4th floor. That process has begun. I need to wait for that vase to fall. And we are strongly tied by our choices and interactions of the past. We are not free from our past. So one is tied by the tight bonds of karma, swept away by one's own desire, a paradigm, the karma ripening in the present, ignorance, all the actions one's done up till today. And here there's this iron net. Chawa in Tibetan means net. It says Dagsin Chagi Jawa. So Dagsin, Actually, Dawa is the word. Dawa is the word for internet in Tibetan. It's net. In Italian, the word cage was used. No, it's an iron net
che ci avvolge.
that envelops us.
Che ci avvolge in un modo intero.
It completely makes reference to what? To this enormous attachment that we have to the I and the my. Daksin. Daksin is also this grasping at the I as an independent, autonomous, is the cause of our selfishness. So we're completely enveloped by this iron net that doesn't allow us to move. We're not able to do anything outside of this perception. Every being is not only tied to the tight bonds of his past, but he's also trapped in a reality, a worldview where he's not able to go beyond the I and the my. He's not able to go beyond this appearance of the world being objective. And as if that weren't enough, he's completely in the dark because he's not able to see what he lives in the present moment, not able to see the past causes, and not able to see what the results in the future will be of the present actions. Is totally in the dark, not able to connect to the past or foresee the future. We're able to see this, aren't we? And this reality, we're not able to identify when it began or when it will end. And in this whole process, I ceaselessly tormented by the three types of suffering: the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive suffering. I'm constantly in this cycle. Thinking in that way, thinking that all mothers are in such conditions, why does it make reference to mothers? There are two ways of seeing this. One is the fact that to feel love and compassion towards someone, it's important to feel closeness. When there's a feeling of closeness, there's empathy. And when there's gratitude, then we can love. It's difficult to not, it's hard to not love someone for whom we have a lot of gratitude. Because let's remember, our starting point is one of selfishness. So if someone's good to me, he becomes my friend. And if I recognize that you have been good to me, I have attraction or aversion towards you. I have attraction towards you. And this attraction generates a kind of amicable feeling towards you and allows me to love you. So the generation of gratitude is fundamental to develop bodhicitta. And we're told that in the antique Tibetan tradition, it was taken for granted that one felt unconditional love towards one's mother. But in today's world, it's not obvious as we feel, as we can see the silence in the room. I mean, today we have this feeling of judgment towards our parents. That is more common. There's this idea that maybe things were done mistakenly. But today, if we were in a vulnerable situation where we're not able to survive alone, not even a day, we're totally dependent. And someone comes and someone saves our life. someone comes and takes care of us, gives us food, protects us from the cold and the heat and sickness, and actually saves our life, what kind of feeling would we have towards someone like who does that? Indifference, gratitude, aversion, attraction. Maybe this person lies to us, does stupid things, has unhealthy dynamics, but does this take away the fact that this person saved our life? The gratitude for the fact that he or she saved our life, should that change? Or is there an expiration date? Okay, you saved my life. Okay, I'm gratitude for a year or two. It's not that you can just, live on your on the laurels for this. Does it have an expiry date, an expiration date? No. Our mother, theoretically, because the biological mother didn't do this for everyone, but in most cases it is. So if it's not biological mother, the one who did in her place, when we were born, someone saved our life, right? Or when we were born, were we immediately ready to, get a job and have our own appointment? No, someone needed to take care of us, feed us, spend endless sleepless nights, take care of us with affection, do everything that wasn't easy, and without which we wouldn't be here today. And I mean, if they didn't do what they did, you imagine how many more traumas we would have. But in this moment of greatest vulnerability, did someone help us? Yes. Doesn't it seem normal and absolutely logical that we should have at least a little bit of gratitude? Then, that our mother or our father, they don't perfectly correspond to our idealized vision of them, or when we put her in the category of mother, we have this idealized vision of how a mother should be, and she doesn't fit. Does this take away the fact that she gave us what she did? That did for us what she did? So, first of all, it's important to look towards our own parents and feel gratitude. And it's interesting because this means I feel gratitude for what you did for me. And this doesn't mean that everything's fine and the problems that I lived are not worth anything. One thing is one thing, another thing is another thing, and one doesn't take away the other. But in our way, often, one thing takes away the other. So if I feel gratitude for you, it's because I don't see the horrible things that I lived. Is it possible that a mother does damage, it hurts one's child voluntarily or involuntarily? Let me let me ask the question differently. Is it possible that a mother doesn't hurt her child voluntarily or involuntarily during the growing process? No, in our interactions with others. It's normal that there are things that go well, things that go less well, because in our ignorance, we see others as if they are us. Every once in a while I hear a mother say, "Oh, I wouldn't want to hurt my child." I mean, the real answer is you have no choice. Because inevitably, as humans, as we interact, we're not all Buddhas. We have attachment, ignorance, jealousy, envy, fear, etc., etc. Naturally, that's where we are. Naturally, we we help each other and we hurt each other. But the fact that a parent, my mother, my father, that their way of behaving, that maybe some of their behavior hurt me, doesn't take away any thing positive that they did for me. And rightly so. The traumas that I have and the difficult moments, so I need to work on my wounds and change certain things, maybe to find my own autonomy, etc., etc., etc. Go for therapy, etc., etc. But all of that, none of that takes away that at the basis there was that at the moment that we were the neediest and most vulnerable, they took care of us. And someone might say, well, they wanted me. Well, what does that have to do with anything? It's like having, when we talk about having gratitude for our teachers, one might say, oh, well, they were paid to do that. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Even if a mother or father didn't even want the child, and anyway, they had the child and protected him or her and raised him and her, it shouldn't change anything regarding our level of gratitude. It's said that at the basis, to be able to develop bodhicitta, we need to feel gratitude for our parents. And it's not that obvious. So this feeling, anyone who is good to me, I need to feel gratitude. And when we feel sincere gratitude towards those who helped us, who cured us, took care of us, protected us from suffering, whether we remember or not, then we start comparing, in Tibetan called Rinpoche. We say, okay, in this life I have my mother and she took care of me, she raised me. I have gratitude towards her and gratitude also towards my father. In my previous life, I imagine I had a mother and a father too. Theoretically. It depends on what kind of birth I had. If I was an animal, then yes. If I was born in the Deva realm or in the hell realms, then no. They're called the miraculous births or trube births, zuke births, like spontaneous or magic births. One is born without parents. That's how it's described. But let's set that aside for now. If we were born also in the hells, the hell realm and the God realm are very similar in many ways. They say that the life is very long, the birth is immediate. There's not the process of childhood. One is born with that body already raised, like when you wake up in a dream. It's not in the dream, oh, they're my parents and in the dream and then you're born. No, it just in an instant you find yourself in that reality. But those situations aside, there are other exceptions when we talk about some types of microorganisms that in Tibetan it's said that they're born from heat and there are no parents there either. But these exceptions aside, in our previous lives, there's a high probability that we had a mother and she would have taken care of us. and then in a life before that one. The logic is, if I had innumerable lives, that means that I have innumerable mothers and fathers and siblings. So I've had innumerable lives and innumerable beings who have loved me, have taken care of me. And when I'm in front of any being, it's more probable that in the past that they took care of me with love. When we look at the innumerable lives that we've had, certainly with love. And that's where the term mother sentient beings, this term comes from. So we should generate this feeling of gratitude and see that everyone around us at some point helped us. So here where it says, thinking that all mothers are in such conditions, in other words, is seeing the suffering of beings. And every one of those suffering beings is connected to us much more than we can imagine. Even if we go to another level, a plate of food, do we depend on others to eat or not? How many beings had to interact and do what and do something so that we had this plate of food in front of us? Many, many, many. Just think about the bees. Think. Have you ever seen in China? There are areas where there are no longer bees, and for there to be fruit, they sell these packets with the pollen, and their people, as a job, they go from flower to flower to do the job of the bees, because the bees have disappeared, and without that there would be hunger. What's one of the greatest dangers of the loss of biodiversity? I mean, we live in a reality that is so complex, a reality where there's an interdependence where in every part plays a fundamental role. So do we depend on or not depend on other beings? We depend on them. For example, the air that we breathe, what does that have to do with a whale? Someone might say, oh, the whales are nice, but who cares if they're there, if they exist or not? A good part of the air that we breathe depends on plankton in the ocean. These plants depend on the fertilizer, and one of the greatest fertilizers in the ocean is the feces of the whales that allow the plankton to reproduce. They reproduce about a third of the oxygen that we depend on. So we can say that every third breath depends on whale's poop. If you eliminate the whales, you can stop breathing. So every time we breathe, we depend on a chain of beings that is incredibly long. And in our own ignorance, we have this view of being independent. And being independent is a kind of a synonym for it's a strength. When no one survives independently. So
quando noi riusciamo a cominciare a
when we're
vedere come
able
noi
to see
dipendiamo
how
da
we
tantissimi
depend
esseri
on
per
so
ogni
many
cosa,
beings for
la
everything,
nostra sopravvivenza in
our
questo corpo,
survival in this body,
un momento di piacere,
a moment of pleasure,
la nostra propria salute
our
mentale,
own mental health,
noi dipendiamo dalla
we
quantità
depend
enorme
on an
sia
enormous
del
quantity
presente
of
che nel
beings
passato.
in the present and in the
Cominciamo
past.
veramente a
If we
osservare a un
start
livello
really
profondo,
observing more deeply,
non esiste neanche un
there's
essere
not
a
a
cui possiamo
single
dire no, tu con me
being
non c'entri niente.
to whom we
Tu a
can
me non
say,
mi hai
no,
mai dato niente.
you have nothing to do with me. You have never
La
given
mia
me
realtà, il
anything.
mio benessere
My
non dipende
reality,
in
my
nessun livello da te.
well-being doesn't depend at
Noi non
all
possiamo fare
on you.
assolutamente con nessun
We
essere.
can't do that with any being.
Perché è importante sentire questo?
Why is this important?
Perché per
To
sentire
feel
amore
this,
verso
because
l'altro
to
dobbiamo
feel
prima di tutto
love
sentire
towards others, first of all, we need
vicinanza.
to feel closeness.
Quando c'è
When there's
gratitudine,
gratitude,
inevitabilmente come
inevitably,
risultato
as a
della
result
gratitudine
of the
nasce un
gratitude,
sentimento di
a,
vicinanza e di amore.
a sense of closeness and love
Quindi questo processo
arises. So this
per andare
process,
oltre il nostro
to
egoismo
go
consiste
beyond
in cosa?
our
Uno, vedere che gli altri esseri
selfishness,
soffrono come noi.
first we need to
Un
see
po'
that
come
other
quando vai
beings
in
suffer the
ospedale
way
e a
we
un
do.
certo punto
Like
trovi
when
qualcuno che ha la stessa malattia.
you go to the
C'è
hospital,
un
for
senso di
example,
empatiia.
and you find someone with the same sickness. There's a kind of
Qualcuno che ha lo stesso
of
problema
you have a
nostro.
feeling, someone who has our same
Addirittura se noi vogliamo in
problem.
qualche modo
And if
creare
we
un
want
vincolo
to
con qualcuno,
create a
cerchiamo qualcosa in
link
comune.
with someone, we try to find
Molto spesso avere un
something in
nemico in comune
to find something
influisce di più che avere un amico in
in
comune.
common, often a common enemy.
Che ne so io,
Uh,
molto spesso io
very
vedo
often
per
I
creare
see
una
if
connessione
you
con
want to
qualcuno,
connect a connection with
parti,
someone,
critichi il governo
criticize the government
o critichi le tasse,
or
che se non
criticize
quella qualcosa a te
Texas,
non ti piace,
something you
probabilmente
don't
quell'altro a te non
like,
piace pure.
and
Quindi
probably
trovi qualcosa
the
che non
one
ti
next to
piace a
you
tutti e due
won't
per
like
creare
either.
un
So
vincolo con
you
l'altro.
find something in common that
Ma quando noi
that
vediamo
neither
tutta la
one likes to
descrizione della
create this
sofferenza in
link.
cui gli esseri si
But if
trovano,
we look at the description of the
noi ci troviamo in una
suffering
situazione diversa.
that all the beings are we in a different
Come
situation?
diceva Shantideva,
As
nel
Shantideva
Bodhisattva
said in the Bodhisattva Charavattara, there's a very beautiful verse where he says something like,
dal momento nel quale
as once
l'altro che si trova davanti a me
the other in front of me
desidera la felicità
desires
tanto quanto la desidero io,
happiness in the same way I do,
desidera non soffrire
desires
tanto
to
quanto lo desidero
not
io,
suffer in the same way I
per
don't want to
quale
suffer.
ragione
Why in the
la mia
world
felicità
is
vale di più
my
della sua, o la mia
happiness
sofferenza vale di più della sua?
worth more than his? Or why is my
Qual è
suffering
la ragione
worth
corretta?
more than his? For what reason?
Oltre che la mia,
Other than it being mine,
non ce n'è.
there's no reason.
Quindi
So
il processo qua
this
è
process
quello di
here
uno
is number one,
vedere la
we
sofferenza nell'altro,
need to see suffering in
capire
others,
in questo
understand
processo
that
che
in this
amare
process
l'altro
that
non vuol dire
loving
essere
others
condiscendente con le sue azioni.
doesn't mean being accepting of everything he does. This is very important.
Pensate al vostro peggior nemico.
I mean, think of your worst
O meglio,
enemy,
pensate alla
or
persona
think
che è il
of
peggior esempio per voi di
the
comportamento,
worst
la
example
persona
of
più
behavior,
cattiva che
the
vi viene in mente,
the
che sia dei momenti presenti
the
o storicamente.
the
Ok?
the most horrible person that you can think of in
La posso amare
present
o non la
time or even a historical figure, and ask yourself, can I love this person?
È faticoso.
It's difficult.
Perché?
But why?
Perché noi partiamo
Because
da un
we
concetto
start
egoista
from a selfish point of
di
view,
amore,
of
dove
a selfish idea of
sentiamo
love, where we think if I love you,
condiscendente con te.
then I agree with your
E l'esempio
way
che
of
vediamo
being, your
delle persone,
behavior. The
se c'è un
example
qualcuno che noi vogliamo
is
tanto bene, un
if
proprio figlio,
if
un
we
amico,
love
o
someone, a
qualcuno che noi
friend, our
vogliamo
own
bene,
child,
quella persona fa qualche
if that
stupidaggine,
someone
si
does
comporta in modo che
something
noi non siamo d'accordo,
wrong, if does something
noi
that we
cosa
don't
facciamo?
agree with, what do we usually
Cerchiamo
do?
di giustificarlo o no?
We try to justify, don't we?
Quando andiamo a parlare a qualcuno
And
di
we
quello che quella persona ha fatto, qual è il
we
commento?
talk
Sì,
to
è vero,
someone
però.
about that. We say, "Oh, it's true, but."
E quando c'è qualcuno a cui abbiamo avversione
And
e
if
fa una cosa bella, cosa
instead,
diciamo?
if there's someone for
Sì, è
whom we
vero,
have
però.
aversion and they do something
Di sminuire
positive, we try to lessen the importance of that positive action. And if someone we love does something positive, we try to increase the value of that. But if someone that I love acts badly, that feeling of attraction and love, little by little, it diminishes. I mean, this is selfishness, a selfish way. I can judge actions. I can say I am totally against this behavior, this way of thinking, this way of acting. But this doesn't take away the fact that I can want that person to not suffer and to be well. Also, because very often the actions of violence are symptoms of suffering. But I ask, what keeps me from loving you other than my selfishness? What's why I can't love you? Once I love you, it doesn't mean that I have to agree with everything that you do. Because as long as we stay in this dynamics, that if I love you, I need to be on your side. And if I'm not on your side because I don't agree with what you do and I can't love you, at that point there's no way out. Because if I love someone and this person acts it badly, and what would be the if I love someone and the person acts badly, what would be the right way to act, to go against the action? So why can't I love someone who acts badly? I can't find a reason. Who has a negative behavior. And those who feel love, the ones who win, when we feel love, we're the ones who win. Because feelings of love is the most beautiful feeling that we can feel. It's something that fills us up. It gives us joy, gives meaning to life. Once I was in a situation that was very strong. I was in Cesena, and I was talking to a group of people in an association. These were all people who had been in disastrous situations, accidents, and people who really had great physical problems. And there was one girl she had been very sporty and jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. The plane crashed. It was a real enormous accident. She was the only one who survived, but she was broken from her head to her toe. And she asked me, often I ask myself what the meaning of life is. What gives meaning to life? But we say, yes, we like living, but imagine what it's like to wake up in the morning full of pain and go to bed with pain. We have pain in your whole body and with no perspective of no hope of getting better. And I was there in front of her, and when you're in front of someone who is in such a state, you can't give, we shouldn't give it to anyone like that, but you can't give a superficial answer.
E ho riflettuto
And I thought about it.
e con tutta
And
sincerità io credo che
with all
quello che dà
sincerity,
senso alla vita,
what gives meaning to life,
quello che
what
veramente rende la vita
really
significativa,
makes life
quello che dà un
meaningful,
senso a essere in vita,
gives
è
meaning to
il
being
sentimento
alive,
e
is the
l'esperienza di
feeling and the
amare
experience
altri
of
ed essere amato.
loving others and being
È la cosa
loved.
più bella.
It's the most beautiful thing.
Però è bellissimo
But
essere amati, ma ad
it's
amare è
beautiful
ancora più
being
bello.
loved, but loving is even more
E quando
beautiful.
l'altro
And
davanti a
when
me,
the
l'altro che cos'è?
other in front
È
of
lo
me, the
strumento, è
other
il
is
mezzo
a
tramite il
tool, the
quale io posso
means through which
traversare
I
la
can
vita
come into
più bella.
contact with the most beautiful part
E
of
quando io ho un
myself.
sentimento
Because
di
when I
amore
have a
verso un'altra
feeling
persona, di
of love
compassione
towards
verso l'altra,
someone,
io sto
feeling of
entrando in
compassion
contatto con la
towards
parte
someone,
più
I'm
bella
coming into contact with the most
e ci
beautiful part of
guadagno tantissimo.
myself, and I gain so
Non ho bisogno di
much.
nulla in
I
cambio,
don't need anything in exchange.
perché noi partiamo anche da
Because
questa cosa, ti
we
amo, quindi tu devi
we
trattarmi in questo
we
modo.
have this idea that I love you, so you need to
C'è
treat
questa
me in
sorta di
this
amare come
way.
se stessimo facendo gli affari.
You know, we love the way we do
In realtà,
business,
dal momento
or
in cui
loving is a
io
kind of
ti
business.
amo,
But once
ossia
I
sono
love
attratto
you,
dalla
or
tua
I'm
felicità,
attracted to your
ho
happiness,
avversione alla
I
tua
have
sofferenza,
aversion to your
ho un
suffering,
sentimento
I have a
sincero
sincere
verso
feeling
di te di questo.
towards you,
Quello da solo mi
that
fa entrare in
alone
contatto con la parte più bella di me,
allows me
cominciare
to
innanzitutto con
enter
te, con la
into
tua altezza,
contact
con
with the
essere
most
stesso.
beautiful part of myself.
Perciò
So
è un'opportunità
it's
unica,
it's a
dove
it's a
non possiamo, e la cosa interessante è che non
it's
è
a unique
possibile per noi
opportunity, and it's not
entrare in
possible
contatto
for
e
us to
sviluppare la parte
come into
più bella
contact
di
with
noi
and to develop the most beautiful
senza
part of
questa
ourselves
persona.
without the other.
Addirittura c'è un dibattito
There's
filosofico,
actually a philosophical
che è un
debate
po' una menata che uno si fa in testa, però esiste questo dibattito quando si studia in un modo con la
that's
dialettica, eccetera.
there's
Si
this
dice non
debate
si può
that
sviluppare
says
amore e compassione
you can't develop love and
senza che ci sia
compassion
qualcuno a cui
without
amare e a
there
cui avere
to
compassione.
without
Quindi
an
queste
object
qualità
of
interne
compassion and love. So these
dipendono
inner
l'una
qualities
dall'altra.
depend on others.
E la domanda che viene
And the
filosofica è:
question, the
ma se tutti
philosophical
gli esseri
question is,
esistenti possono
if
raggiungere lo stato
all
di Buddha,
beings can reach
cosa
Buddhahood,
succederà con Dio
what's
la vita
going to
ultima?
happen when there's
Come farà
uh,
l'ultimo essere
the
esistente
last
a
being?
sviluppare
How will
compassione,
he develop
visto che non ci
compassion,
sono altri esseri sofferenti?
given that there are no more suffering beings?
Uno dice, prima di tutto
One
non ci
says,
preoccupiamo.
first of all, let's not worry about that right now.
Secondo,
Secondly,
se così dovessi
if
essere,
that
immagino
were
io
to be true, I
che esseri
imagine
illuminati
that
si
an
manifesteranno in un modo
enlightened
che
being
appaiono come degli esseri sofferenti
would
che aiutano l'altra persona a sviluppare
would
compassione.
manifest as a
Ora farvi
suffering
una
being
domanda
to help.
che magari non siamo
And
gli ultimi.
and then here's the question: maybe we're the last ones. How can we know?
Non credo, però
I don't think so, but
tra le infinite possibilità
among the
c'è quella.
infinite number of possibilities, there's this one is possible too. It's a nice idea, isn't it?
Comunque sia,
Anyway,
che le cose più belle,
the most
quelle cose
beautiful
di cui parlavamo
things
ieri, che
that we
più
talked about
danno
yesterday, for example, these things that the more I have, the better off I am, that which can uphold a real state of well-being, like generosity and wisdom and love. These many of these depend on others. And when we allow ourselves to love someone unconditionally, and that means I don't set rules for love. I like a contract where there are conditions. I'll love you if. So I sign this contract of love if you respect this, that, and the other. The more conditions there are, the more difficult it is to sign. So if I'm able to love without any conditions, I love you because you exist. I don't want you to suffer because you suffer. Shantideva said that suffering needs to be eliminated independently of who is suffering. Any being, all beings have the right to be happy. It doesn't matter what body they have, where they live. And really, if we had this opening a little bit, if we were more open, we would have a different mind. So getting back to the text, thinking that all mothers, thinking about the suffering, even beings that act in a deplorable way, they are completely swept away by their desire, by their worldview, their karma, their ignorance, completely tied by these karmic bonds. They're trapped in this iron net of selfishness. They're in complete darkness. They have no idea what has created their experience of the present moment and have no idea what the future will be. They live trying to avoid the suffering of suffering, trying to keep the suffering of change, and completely ignorant of the all-permeating suffering, as are we. So this brings us a certain closeness to beings. This is the basis of equanimity, where I see between me and you, there's no difference. Think of the worst person ever. Does he want to be happy or not? Or does he want to suffer? Is he swept away by the four powerful rivers in the same way I am? Is he tied by the tight bonds of karma and the attachment of I and the my, like me? So we're in the same boat. We're in the same situation. We have different points of view. We have different ideas, but we are in the same boat. And together with this, in the same way, there are beings for whom I have a strong attraction and feelings of gratitude. In the past, so many beings have helped me. The more we're able to widen this feeling of connection, the more we're able to enter into contact and allow that tension to melt, that tension that closes us up to others. But this feeling, once it's developed, it brings a huge frustration. I don't know if you've ever experienced this feeling of generating a certain amount of indifference to the suffering of someone else, because of this sense of inability to help, and so one protects oneself because protects himself with a feeling of indifference, because one feels impotent, feels unable to help. And if you open this up to all beings, then you can imagine how frustrated you'd feel. It said at the beginning of the path of the Bodhisattva, the first steps, the only reason why one would leave this path, which is not for lack of love for others, because once one really opens up one's heart for others, one can't turn back on that. But it's for lack of faith in oneself. Then one might say, okay, instead of saving everyone, at least I won't hurt anybody and I'll take care of myself. Instead, bodhicitta requires two attitudes. One has to do with others. It's called aspiration towards others, this desire for all beings to be happy, this altruistic idea where we expand our desire for happiness for all beings. And then there's all the aspiration for oneself. This deep, deep trust or faith in one's own ability to reach a state where one is able to help others. It's that feeling of saying, today I'm not able, but if I use my resources well, I can get to a place where I'll be able to help everyone. So what becomes my priority? Developing those qualities. It's a little bit similar to the story I told before, that the man who had the duty-free shops. And once he said, I want to help people who are in poverty, but if I don't have money, how can I help? So since I want to help a lot of people, I need to make a lot of money so I can help more people. And that's what he did. That's why we call it the generation of bodhicitta, like a king. So I do for myself to then help others. There's also generation of the bodhicitta that's similar to a pastor, a herder, a sheep herder. So that intention is okay. I first the sheep, and then I follow, which is not possible. And then there's also the possibility of generating bodhicitta like a boatsman. And so where we put all the beings together in a boat and we go together. And these are not absolutely possible, because in reality they all transform into the bodhicitta, generation of bodhicitta, like a king. Because first I need to develop myself to then be able to help others. I mean, how can I want everyone to speak Sanskrit if I don't speak Sanskrit? I could say that the language one speaks, the language one. So I'm just inventing something as to why everyone should be speaking Sanskrit. So I want everyone to speak Sanskrit, but I don't know how to speak. I don't know how to say a word. If I really want everyone to speak Sanskrit, first I need to learn it and then try to teach it so that others can then learn and then teach it. So if I really want every being to be free from selfishness and attachment and jealousy, envy, arrogance, etc., etc., where's my starting point? Myself. I need to overcome these mental defilements so that I can help others do the same. So that second characteristic, that aspiration to want to develop one's qualities so that one can help other beings be free from their suffering. So thinking that all mothers are in such conditions generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Generate the mind of being an awakened one. Bodhicitta is made up of two types. Mumpa Semkye, which is the bodhicitta of aspiration, and then bodhicitta of action or engagement. So, of aspiration and engaging bodhicitta. Shantideva described it like this. The first one is like wanting to walk and wanting to go, and the second one is actually going. First comes the desire, a sincere and deep desire to want to reach enlightenment, to help others. I want it, but I don't, but I stop there, and I just want it. But as we said this morning, the first thing to get something is desiring it. This is the starting point. So when I really have this passion, this desire to want to help every being that I meet and want to do everything possible to help them, not in short term, but mid, long term. At this point, I see that I really, all the problems that we have come from the mental defilements of human beings. So we need less anger, less envy, less etc. If we really were to make a UN resolution, we should make a resolution and an international campaign for altruism against selfishness. Bring it into the schools all around the world. I've already made some movies of this, but it's important to dream. And here there's another point that I just want to add briefly, because I was thinking on a wider level. There was a moment of disillusionment. In the middle of all of this, there's a detail. It's much more than a detail. It's not possible to experience any result without having first created the cause. This state of harmony, of peace, doesn't come from love and respect and altruism and compassion, etc. But we need also the causes to support the joy, the so-called merits. If I myself, if I don't cultivate over the years and over lifetimes the causes to uphold a state of peace, no matter how much intellectual effort I put into it, I mean, the two things go together. It's fundamental. This accumulation of virtuous causes, a positive karmic force to support states of consciousness that are positive. So that's why also in certain cultures, when there's a national crisis, a collective crisis, what should be done is do things that create positive energy. I remember quite a few years ago on the island of Bali, there was a tsunami alarm, and could have been very dangerous. And the government, it's a reality that is very different. What would they have done here? Alarm, everyone go somewhere secure, and let's look at the practical aspects. So they looked at practical aspects too, but they gave the order of national holiday. Nobody could go to work. Everyone needed to go home and pray. All the religions, the Muslims, the Christians, the Hindus, and the Buddhists, and the people, everyone in their own tradition, they were ordered to renew their offerings and clean the altars, and the idea was to generate positive energy to counteroppose the danger. And the tsunami came in a microscopic way. It didn't do any damage, but this cultural identity, it was very, very positive. So I heard also in the pandemic, for example, I mean, what could we do on a positive side, in addition to keeping our distance and wearing a mask? When there's a moment of conflict or crisis, we need to put energy into what's positive. That's why in Tibetan there's this proverb, which means when your barley flour when the barley flour is finishing, offer the torma, which is made up of this barley flour. So so the idea is you're using the words of St. Francis, it's by giving that we receive. It's by offering that it comes back to you. So even if you're using up, you've got the last bit of your food, use that to make an offering. To be able to uphold states of balance and satisfaction, love, peace, joy, we need the so-called merits, which are these positive karmic force that uphold these inner states of joy and peace. And if we look in the Bodhisattva Charavattara, there's a whole chapter that talks about this. So once we've generated this feeling of altruism, we need to keep it and do everything possible to uphold it. It's not enough to generate it once. Even on a collective level, on a familial level, or as a group, in any context, it's important to do virtuous activities together to have a well-being of a group. Virtuous actions can be divided into 2 or 3 groups. The 2 main ones are doing something that diminishes suffering or creates a state of well-being towards oneself or towards others, or both. So in a society, when there is this awareness to take care of others and give priority to others, this is the basis of a healthy society. And this same thing for our own lives. I just repeat one more time. The more obsessed we are with the I and the my, the more we see taking care of someone like a sacrifice, the more we'll suffer. The more we're able to see that when I allow myself to love someone based on their mere existence, they're giving me the opportunity to come into contact with the most beautiful part of myself. I mean, just for that, we should have gratitude. And it's described in many, many texts that if we were to put on a scale how much gratitude we should have, how much put the gurus and the Buddhas on one side or the sentient beings? Which one is worth more for our development? It's actually the same weight. None of us, we could go live with all the Buddhas, could have Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, Trisha Rinpoche. Just imagine the greatest. Maybe our grandfather is Atisha, and our mother is Tara, and Lama Ganchen Rinpoche is our father. Trisha Rinpoche, our uncle. They're all there. But if you don't have sentient beings, if we don't have sentient beings, we're blocked. We're blocked on the path. You cannot develop without other beings for whom we open up our hearts. If I'm with all holy beings, what kind of compassion can I generate? I need to generate compassion towards someone who's suffering. That's how I can come into contact with that part of myself. That's why it said that the gratitude that we should have towards beings is as much as what we should have towards our own gurus. And using another logic, very often this happens. We go to our masters, and we have tremendous respect and gratitude. With Lama Ganchen Rinpoche, for example, no matter what Rinpoche asked, everybody was ready to execute his desires. But what was the objective? What's the objective of a bodhisattva, of a Buddha? Rinpoche was serving who? Who was Rinpoche's boss? He was serving beings. He lived at the service of beings. And if we were serving him, actually, if there's a hierarchy, there's a boss, and then there's a boss of my boss. If I'm serving my boss, then I'm also serving the boss of my boss. And in the same way, who's the boss of the Buddha? The beings. Because they live at the service of beings. Bodhisattvas live at the service of beings. So when I help someone, I put myself at the service of the Dharma, it's the best way to be of service to my gurus. I'm helping them do their job. I don't know if this logic is clear. Sometimes there's this idea on our spiritual path, this feeling of respect and gratitude towards our masters, holy beings, which is fine. But this cannot exist in opposition to others. Sometimes there's this idea, oh, there's my guru is here, and others are, I'm ready to elbow to anyone, to get up there and serve my guru. No, this makes an opposite effect. For this reason, here at the center, for example, how much energy, let's talk about Lama Ganchen. How much energy did Lama Ganchen put in this center? Everything. Enormous quantity of energy. And sometimes you could hear people say, oh, but for Rinpoche I would do everything, but for the center, no. But where's your logic there? You give to him, he gives to the center. If you do directly to the center, you jump a step. You skip a step. I don't know if that's clear. And when we see and we talk about Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and sacred holy beings who have at the basis this love and compassion for beings, when we do something for others, it's the best offering that we can make to the holy beings. So on many levels, allow ourselves to go beyond this self-gratification, allow ourselves to open ourselves up to others without thinking that, without this duality of thinking that by doing something for ourselves, it's selfish, and if I'm doing something for someone else, I'm also doing for myself. When I do something for myself, I'm doing it also for you, because if I'm not well, then I can't help you. There's no sense of guilt in taking care of oneself. So one key in the development of bodhicitta is this transcending this duality of the I and other. This is one of the main objectives that we should have. And for this reason, along our path, that first part is loving ourselves, recognizing what samsara is, the all-pervasive suffering, this desire to get out of the cycle of suffering. Once we have that, we take that same desire and we redirect it, not just to ourselves, but we include others. And this is the second main this is the second principal aspect of the path, the so-called bodhicitta, which is the basis of the Mahayana path. This great vehicle, it is this great responsibility that one assumes to work for others, which doesn't mean that in the Hinayana vehicle that there isn't love and compassion, but what's missing is this sense of responsibility, where one takes a responsibility to do what's necessary to help others get out of their suffering. So there's a part of self-esteem and believing in oneself that is manifested in the joy of helping others. It's said that a bodhisattva who bases himself on this feeling, he sees someone, and if he sees that he can help, he's joyous and enthusiastic, and it can hardly contain himself. He's so happy. It's not a sacrifice. And once we have that, the bodhisattva path is made up. Now that I need to maintain and cultivate love, and on that basis, I need to cultivate generosity, because the development of generosity is the basis of merits to be able to generate and maintain the other qualities. Then morality, to avoid what is harmful and cultivate what's good. Patience, eliminate one's own anger and develop inner space. Enthusiastic effort, to no longer have laziness, but be able to put effort into what is hard but virtuous. Concentration and wisdom, having a correct view of reality. This is the path of the bodhisattva. This is where we should put our energy. Every once in a while, we have this whole story. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. Let's practice the perfections. Let's put ourselves at the service of others. I don't know what my passion is. Sorry if I say it like this, but it's fine to have the passion for things and do things, but those are momentary things. Come what may, if we are able to see this development of generosity and morality and patience and enthusiastic effort, concentration and wisdom as what gives meaning to our life, and see that every occasion is a good occasion to put to practice, we get out of the danger of religion for religion, because so and we avoid the trap of being the good Buddhist. Who cares about being a good Buddhist? What I need is to generate and develop generosity, morality, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. This is what I need. And even in the history, there are people like Naropa who at the university there's the headmaster. He was like the headmaster of the University of Nalanda, which was the most important center of study and Buddhist practice. I mean, he was Nalanda was very, very important. At the time, people came from all over the world to study in Nalanda. At a certain point, he escaped, and he started living his life like a normal person, and he went to look for a master. He escaped the institution and was looking for a master, because a danger of the institution is that we need to be good in our role more than actually practice. And then he found Tilopa, who had him do everything imaginable along his path and really helped him develop qualities on a deep level. And I don't mean to say that the institutions have no value, but we need to be careful to not fall into this trap. So if we really give importance to the 6 perfections and what gives meaning to life, so we develop ourselves to be able to help everyone. Wow, I mean, there's so much to do. There's no time at all to get bored. Every occasion is a good occasion to practice. So bodhicitta has to do with all of this. It's something that needs to be cultivated and should be seen as something possible. One mistake that is often made is looking at these characteristics, like the renunciation and bodhicitta, and this desire to reach enlightenment for the benefit of other all beings, or correct view of reality, that they're put up on a pedestal, and one thinks that one can never reach these states. No, Buddha taught them, Lama Tsongkhapa transmitted them, because we can reach them. And in all sincerity, if I didn't believe that each one of us could do it, I wouldn't be here sharing this. The main reason is sincerely, I believe it. I'm not in a fairy tale land. No, I believe it. Otherwise, there would be no meaning, no reason. If I didn't believe that we can really develop these characteristics, like renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of reality, the first thing to do would be to close the center. I remember once when we came to the center, one of the technicians of the city said, "Wow, here, this would be a really great disco." In all sincerity, if I didn't believe that the human beings are not able to develop these qualities, and that the center isn't the place to help the people do that, then I would close the center, give the money to the poor, and go live in the mountaintops. But I do believe that it's possible, and that's why I'm here. And that's why these teachings have been transmitted from generation to generation, because those before me believed in us. And we can do it. We are doing it. Every once in a while, I think, if all of these great masters believed in me, at the very least I need to believe in myself. So these are not impossible things. The definite emergence, bodhicitta, correct view of reality, these are not impossible. These are states that require effort. It's not from one day to the next, but it's possible. And it needs to become the main objective. What do I do in my life? I develop love for myself, love towards others, and a coherent view of reality. Oh, and I also work in the bank, and I do this and that to make ends meet. But at the basis, to get to this commitment, level of commitment. So even if renunciation has been developed, if one hasn't generated pure bodhicitta, it will not become the cause of the perfect joy of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma so difficult to undo, trapped in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such conditions, generate the mind of enlightenment. It's time for our dedications, and tomorrow we will continue with the correct view of reality.
Namkar chinle chochur gep tempe dröme sasumgi drove munsela takto ne gyur chi nimo dele delekshi ninsen takto delekpe koncho sumke jingilo koncho sumke ngodrubot sol koncho
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Kepe Tsogen Tsongkhapa Lo San Trakpe Shabla Asolwade.
Trashidile. Have a nice evening, and we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30.